It's the first time I'm giving the shiur, but really I'm being mamshich, the derech of my shver zichron levracham Shaftel Neuberger. He used to come once a year to give the shiur. In fact, I think this cycle of Daf Yomi he gave the first shiur on brachas. And whenever he used to give the shiur, he used to prepare for the shiur, and he was so excited about giving the shiur. He used to say it over to the children-in-law. And I'm really hoping to be able to live up to that legacy, to be able to give a shiur like my shver. So I prepared the shiur, and I was ready to give the shiur. This morning I met the Yid who normally comes to the shiur. He was in Lakewood for Shabbos. He said, "What are you giving the shiur on?" I said, "Akdama to Shnayim Moichsin." I said, "Yeah, what's the Akdama?" So I said, "I figured this week everyone finished Baba Kama starting Baba Metzia. So I'm going to give a shiur on the connection between Baba Kama and Baba Metzia." So he said, "Very nice. That was last week's shiur." So I'm a little bit stuck. That was already last week's shiur. So I was driving on the way up from Lakewood, what to give the shiur on. But I decided, look, it says it's going to be Hakdama to Baba Metzia, so I'm probably going to continue what was said in last week's shiur. I might chazer over some things, but now that we learned the first two blat in Baba Metzia, I would like to just say over in different parts of the Gemara where you're going to see a lot of these yisaidis that Mistama, I imagine, were already spoken about last week. So again, Mishnah starts, Shnai Meichsen Betalis, Zel Imer Ani Mitzasiyah, Zel Imer Ani Mitzasiyah, Zel Imer Kula Shali, Zel Imer Kula Shali, Ze Yishava She'en Loi Ba Pachis Mechetzia, Ze Yishava She'en Loi Ba Pachis Mechetzia V'Yachloiku. The din of the Mishnah is Yachloiku B'Shvua. You make a Shvua, and it's Yachloiku B'Shvua. Taisus asks, you do it the kasha the Rishonim, Tema. The Maishna Me'ahi Da Arba, the Omar Kol Da Olam Govar, Perik Cheskas Habatim. As we all know, just to keep the case simple, if let's say you would have a talus on a shelf, Reuben says the talus is my talus, shel avoisai. Shimon says the talus is my talus, shel avoisai. The halacha is called the olam gavar. Whoever is stronger, whatever stronger means, physically, rayas, whatever the case is, whoever is stronger grabs the talus. So Tais is asking a kasha, why over here, when they're arguing over talus, you say achloiku? Yet in Baba Basra, when they're arguing over a talus, if the talus is on the shelf, you say kol dolam gavar. And for Taisus, yesh leimar da oichs and shiny, the choshev kiilo kol echad yesh loi ba bevadai hachetzi dan atzad yimai tavas haidi dehu. Taisus says this yisoid that when it comes to oichsin, in a case where they're both holding on to the talus, each one has a muchzakais, a cheskas moment on the talus, and since each one has a cheskas moment on the talus, memela, you automatically say achloiku. Taisus in Baba Basra speaks it out just a little bit clearer. The way Taisus in Baba Basra says it, the oichs and shiny, the kivan sheshnei muchzakin, since both are muchzakim in the talus, chashev ki'ilu anu yoidin sheyesh l'shnein chelek ba, shekol davar yesh lahamid b'cheskas mishehu biyadai. When it comes to a cheskas metaltlin, as we all know, that whoever is in possession of an item, it's determined that he is the vadai owner of the item. So if one person possesses an item, he has a muchzakais, you say it's his item. If two people possess an item, then you say it's their item. So essentially what Taisus is saying is that in our Mishnah of Shnai Moichs and Betalis, the achloiku is almost a foregone conclusion. When you see two people holding on to the talus, they might be arguing. When you see two people holding on to a talus, they're partners. And what happens when partners are partners in the talus and the partnership goes sour? You divide the talus. But the pshat is each one automatically has 50% of the talus. So according to Tosfos, the achloiku of our Mishnah is natural. When you have two people holding on to a talus, both are muchsakim, naturally you'll say achloiku. Masha'en came when the talus is on the shelf, there's no muchsakais, it's not in anyone's possession, so there you'll say kol dolam gavar. You do the teretz of Tosfos. The Ramban asked the same kasha of Tosfos, but says a different teretz. All right. Zok the Ramban, he asked the same kasha, what's the difference between in Baba Basra you say kol dolam gavar and here you say achloiku? Zok the Ramban, Dahi arba leitfisi lo tarvayu el munachasi besimta. That in the case of Baba Basra, they're not holding on to it, rather it's in a simta, or b'mokim she'shneim shava, lefikach kol dolam gavar. Aval mishnaseinu she'shneim adukim ba, ein moitziin miyadam loymar kol dolam gavar. From the Ramban, it sounds like it's almost like the opposite of Tosfos. That really we want to say kol dolam gavar. But the thing is, by shnayim oichs and betalis, we can't allow someone to pry out of the fingers the talis from someone else. Meaning, according to the Ramban, it's not the pshat that naturally you were saying yachloiku. It's almost by default. Really, we would say kol dom gavar like we do in Baba Basra. But since both parties are holding on to the talis, kol dom gavar is going to require that you literally pull the talis away from someone who is holding on to the talis. Kol dom gavar means whoever stronger wins. Bezdin doesn't want that to happen. Therefore, Bezdin says yachloiku. So in the Ramban, it seems like that yachloiku is more like a pshara. In Tosfos, the yachloiku was more because those are the rights determined by both Bali Davar when they're fighting over the talis. In the Ramban, it's really because you can't say Kol Dom Gavar since both are holding onto the talis and Kol Dom Gavar would require prying it out of someone else's fingers. Then Mela we say yachloiku. So we have a machlokes, Tosfos and Ramban. What is really the yachloiku of the Mishnah? So as you probably heard last week, that this is a machlokes Tosfos and Ramban l'shitasam. What is the hemshich of Baba Metzia from Baba Kama? But before we discuss that hemshich, I'd just like to be makdim. It could be this was spoken about again last week, but just to chazer it over, some rules in the halachas of Shavuos. The Rif, some say it's the Rif, some say it's the Enokel of the Rif, wrote at the end of the Masechta Shavuos a pirush called Shiur Shavuos, where he brings down all the different halachas of the different Shavuos that exist. I'd just like to read one little keta just to discuss some hilchas of Shavuos. Zok the Rif. Adabar ala chesh ben mine Shavuos v'zichron shmoisam kol achas lemina. I'm going to discuss the different types of Shavuos. I'm going to categorize the different types of Shavuos that exist. V'sholosh Shavuos hein shemechayvin dayanon lebalei dinin. All Shavuos fall into one of three categories that Bezdin is going to be mechayiv someone to swear. What are those three categories? Harishayna hi Shavuos HaTorah al nishboin v'loy mishalmim k'dekasav krav v'lokach ba'ila v'loy yishalmim. The first type of shvuah is a shvuah not Torah. A Shavuos HaTorah is a Shavuos HaNiftarim. It's a shvuah where the Baal Dover is allowed to keep what he has if he makes a shvuah d'oraisa. That is a shvuah of, you started the sugi of Moed b'miktzas. That's a shvuah of Eid Echad. That's a shvuah HaShoimrim. These are shvuahs that people make to keep what it is that they have. That is the first type of shvuah. Zok the Rif weiter, of the Rif. V'ashvuah hashenis hi anikra shvuah d'Rabbanon. The second type of shvuah is called a shvuah d'Rabbanon. That the Rif understands is what's called a shvuah hanoitlim. A shvuah hanoitlim is a shvuah that a toyin, that a claimant makes in order to be able to collect. So again, a shvuah d'oraisa is a shvuah made by a nitan, by a defendant in order to keep. A shvuas hamishna, which is a shvuas hanoitlim, is made by a toyin, is made by a claimant in order to collect. And then the Rif says there's a third type of shvuah. Zok the Rif, v'hashvuah hashlishis hi shvuas hesis, upirish lashon hesis hatolav hashlocha. The third type of shvuah is called a shvuas hesis. Zok the Rif, what is a shvuas hesis? A shvuas hesis also is a shvuah that the Rabbanon made on a muhsik, on a defendant. If he's able to keep what he has, it's also a shvuas haniftarim. So again, we have a shvuah d'oraisa, which is a shvuah haniftarim made by the nitan. We have a shvuas hamishna, which is a shvuas hanoitlin made by the toiveya, by the claimant. And then we have weiter shvuas hesis, again, made by a nitan in order to keep what he has. But there's a very big difference between a shvuas haniftarim of a shvuah d'oraisa and a shvuas haniftarim of a shvuas hesis. When it comes to shvuah d'oraisa, shvuas haniftarim, if you don't swear, you have to pay. That is the din by a shvuas haniftarim of a shvuah d'oraisa. Shvuah moed b'miktzas, Eid Echad, you don't swear, you pay. Mashe Enkin, when it comes to shvuas haniftarim, or shvuas hesis, the shvuah d'Rabbanan, the Gemara comes out paskins that if you don't swear, you do not have to pay. Bezdin puts you in chayrim, puts you in chayrim for a certain amount of time, but l'maisa, you don't swear, you don't pay. So again, a shvuas haniftarim of a d'oraisa, you don't swear, you pay. A shvuas hanoitlim of the Mishnah, if you don't swear, you can't collect, because the only way you can collect is with a shvuah. A shvuas hesis is a shvuah also haniftarim, but if you don't swear, you don't pay, we just put you into chayrim. With that hakdam of these three shvuas, now we can discuss a little bit this machlokes, the Tosfos and the Ramban. What is the hemshech from Baba Kama, and realize that's l'shitasam. As I'm sure you heard, Tosfos says that the hemshech of Our Mishnah of Shnaim Oichsin Betalis is the last Mishnah, Baba Kama, the Yachloiku, which is between a balabas and a carpenter. The large pieces of wood go to the balabas, the shavings go to the carpenter. That's a case of Yachloiku, not a 50-50 Yachloiku. That's large pieces go to the balabas, small pieces go to the carpenter, but it's a division. In that Mishnah, there's no mention of a shvua. Now, of course, there's no mention of a shvua in the Mishnah on Kufya Test because they're not arguing over facts. They're simply arguing over who has a right to what? Everyone agrees on the facts, as opposed to the Mishnah in Bava Metzia, they're arguing over facts. I say I picked it up first, he says he picked it up first. So the Mishnah on Kufya Test, there's a Yachloiku, there's a division without a Shvua. The Ramban understands that no, that the Hemshech is from the Mishnah on Kufya Dalid, a Mishnah which is discussing a Shvuas HaNoitlin. What's the case in the Mishnah over there? You have a Lekech Min Aganif, that he has to go ahead and give back the item that he purchased innocently. The way we understand it, he purchased innocently. He has to give it back to the Nignav, but he has a right to collect from the Nignav the amount of money he paid for the item. Now, he can make up how much he paid for the item. Who knows how much he paid for the item? He has to make what's called a Shvuas HaNoitlim. He has to make a Shvuas HaNoitlim, how much he paid for the item, in order to recoup the amount of money he paid for the item from the Nignav. He doesn't make the Shvua, then Avada, he's not going to be able to collect. Now, in that case, the Mishnah there, you have a Shvua, but there's no Yachloiku. So we have Tosfos learning that the Hemshech is Yachloiku, no Shvua. Ramban is learning the Hemshech is Shvua, no Yachloiku. What's this Machlokes? So I think the Machlokes is the Shitasam. According to Tosfos, the Yachloiku in the Mishnah is the Iker Chiddush of the Mishnah that you say Yachloiku. You say Yachloiku because the rights of the Shnaim Oichsin say Yachloiku. We have a forced partnership over here. You have both are Muchsakim. Yachloiku is Midin Vadai. Therefore, that's a Hemshech from Kufya Tes, where over there also the division is a Din Vadai. And according to Tosfos, the Shvua is just a Shvuas Haniftarim. That's all it is. It's a Shvuas Heses. But the Iker Din of the Mishnah is to say Yachloiku. I want to be mechadish, but I think Rabbi Kiva Eger is mesupik on this in Hagais and Shulchan Aruch, that according to Tosfos, what would happen if one party doesn't want to make a shvua? Shnai machzim betalis. One is ready to make a shvua, and b'pachas mechetzia. The other party says, look, it's mine, I picked it up first, but I don't want to swear. I'm not comfortable swearing. It could very well be that according to Tosfos, you still say Yachloiku, and he still gets half. You might put him in chayrim, you might say, look, you want to take the half without a shvua? There are rules about that. They might put you in chayrim, but it's a shvuas heses, a shvuas haniftarim, and if he doesn't want to swear and still wants to take half, he's allowed to do so. Because according to Tosfos, the Yachloiku, the reason why each one's getting half is because that's their muchzakos. Therefore, each one gets half. So according to Tosfos, the shvua is something that you might be chayiv, but if you don't make the shvua, you still say Yachloiku. And therefore, Tosfos holds it's a hemshech from the Mishnah on Kufya Tes. Masha Ein came the Ramban who holds that really this Yachloiku is not because they're both Muchsakim. It's only because you can't say Kol Dolam Gavar, because you can't allow one person to grab from the other. So like the Ramban, it's Bezdin who's saying Yachloiku. Like the Rav said, the Torah is like Yachloiku, Bezdin's like Yachloiku. That's the Yachloiku that's happening. There, the Ramban's going to hold Yachloiku b'shvua. You want to get half, you have to swear. I would say that according to the Ramban, if you don't swear, you then get your half. What happens to it? Does the other party get it? Munach, I don't want to get into. But whatever it is, like the Ramban, the Shvuah in the Mishnah is a Shvuas HaNoitlim, and you collect half. You don't swear, you don't collect. So there could very well be a Machlokes Tosfos in the Ramban. In our Mishnah, where it says Yachloiku b'Shvuah, what happens if one party doesn't want to swear? Do you still say Yachloiku the way we're learning in Tosfos? You would still say Yachloiku, and you want to take half, put you in chayrim? Like the Ramban, we're not going to say Yachloiku. Machlokes Tosfos and Ramban l'shitasam. Let's go weiter over the next few sugyas. Just discuss how this machlokes goes through now that you learned the first two blocks in Bava Metzia. Let's look at Rashi on the Mishnah. Let's see how we would learn Rashi. When Rashi explains the Mishnah Shnaim Oichsin Betalis, Zok Rashi, Davka Oichsin Tishnei Muchzakim Ba. That you say Achloiku in the Mishnah only because they are both Oichsin. Vein Lezeh Koyach Ba Yosim Izeh. Then Rashi says, "She'ilu ha'isib yad echad levadai, havi idach ha'moitzi mechaver va'olav haraya, va'olav lahavi raya be'ed m'shui shaloi, ve'enoi nemon zeh litoil b'shvua." For me, the words of the Rashi sound like that when it's Shnayim Oichsin Betalis, then you are nemon litoil b'shvua. You can take with a shvua. But if only one person's holding on to the talis, whatever the case will be, we'll see later Gemaras, right? Then you're not nemon litoil b'shvua. Now, if I would be like Tosfos, I would say, you're never nemon to be litoil b'shvua in our Mishnah. No one's taking with a shvua. In our Mishnah, you need oichsin because you're taking as a result of being oichsin. If you're both not oichsin, we're not going to say achloiku. No one's taking with a shvua. But in the Ramban's understanding that the achloiku in the Mishnah is you're taking with a shvua. So if you go out on that derech, then you understand what Rashi is saying. Rashi is saying is when you have a right litol b'shvua to take with a shvua, that's when they're both oichsin. If only one person's being oiches, then you're not nemon litol b'shvua, because then there's a klal gadol b'din hamotzim mechaver alav haraya. So I would naturally put Rashi together with the Ramban, which now leads to another machlokes Tosfos and the Ramban, which is very interesting. Tosfos and Rashi, which is very interesting. But before we get to that, I would like to now discuss a different sugya that you learned today of Tana Rebbe Chia. As you probably learned in today's daf, we have the sugya of Moed b'miktsas. Okay, how does the Gemara start off in the sugya of Moed b'miktsas? Zok the Gemara azay. Tana Rebbe Chia. Manali biyad chavala aymer ein lecha biyadi klum. Reuven says you owe me $100. Shimon says I didn't borrow anything from you. Va'edim mi'idim oisei sheyesh le 50 zuz. Edom say was 50. Now the Rishonim speak out. Edom are not saying it was only 50 because then there's no din Torah. If it was only 50, then you know he only owns 50. But Edom is saying we know about 50. Another 50 we don't know about, but we know about 50. Zok b'chia, that is equivalent to the case of Moed b'miktsas. Moed b'miktsas, as we all know, a Malva says I lent you $100, you owe me $100. The Levi says back no, it was only 50. Zok b'chia, that is the same din as Moed b'miktsas. That's kal v'chaymer. So the din is you still owe 50. You have to make. You owe 50, and the other 50 you have to make a shvua of Moed b'miktsas. Zog the Gemara in Reb Chia. V'tana tuna shnayim oichsen betalas ze omer ani mitzasiya. Zog the Gemara. Reb Chia is saying, at least at this point in the Gemara, Reb Chia is saying is that's the shvua of the Mishnah. In the Mishnah, the case is the din of the Mishnah, the din shvua in the Mishnah is this shvua d'oraisa of Moed b'miktsas. Each party is claiming that they own the whole talis. There's an anan sadi that there's only half the talis. So therefore, in our Mishnah, what we have is a shvua d'oraisa of Moed b'miktsas. The Gemara is going to ask over here. The Chayei Edim know it's only 50. All right, that's going to be the Gemara in Daf Dalet Amud Aleph, tomorrow's Daf. But right now, the Gemara is understanding that the shvua of the Mishnah, according to Reb Chia, is a shvua d'oraisa of Moed b'miktsas. Frek the Rashba Akasha. And the Rashba, by the way, learns al derech the Ramban. Frek the Rashba Akasha. Excuse me. Hada Omar v'tana tuna loy dami. The Mishnah is a very bad comparison to the shvua of Moed b'miktsas of Reb Chia. Why? The kol hanishban shebetayra nishban v'loy mishalmin. All nishban that are in the Torah are shvuas haniftarim. You swear you don't pay. Vahani nishban v'noitlin. But the shvua in the Mishnah is a nishba v'noitel. It's a shvua and you're collecting. You're not being potter. You are collecting with your shvua. Elakim v'loikai loy dakina be kulehai the homi kol mokim asikna dal karchet hakonas chachamhi v'loy shaycha b'doiraisa. The Ramban says anyway we're going to slug up this Tana Tuna of Reb Chia. But the Ramban says, and he leaves it emistic, that you cannot learn the shvua in the Mishnah is a shvua d'oraisa, because a shvua d'oraisa is a shvuas haniftarim. The shvua of our Mishnah is a shvuas hanoitlin. And therefore, you cannot learn our Mishnah is a shvua d'oraisa. Anyway, we're going to Madar Reb Chia. Azoi zok the Ramban. Zok the Rashba, excuse me. With that, I wanted to explain another machlekes, Rashi and Tosfos, back on Daf Beis Amud Beis. And Daf Beis Amud Beis, in yesterday's Daf, we learnt that the case of the Mishnah is not only Shnayim Oichsim B'talis, where they both claim they found the talis first, but also a case of Shnayim Oichsim B'talis, who purchased the talis from a Meicher. The Gemara asks, why not just ask the Meicher? And the Gemara goes to the Sugi over here, the way Rashi explains that a Meicher doesn't have a din nemanus to say Lezem Acharti, Lezela Mecharti, because since he received money from both parties, therefore the Meicher is not, he's not oimid anymore. He doesn't remember who he sold it to, who he didn't sell it to. That's the din of the Gemara on Beis Amud Beis. Rashi says something very interesting though. Zok Rashi, V'loy Garsinan V'loy Yoda. Meaning in the Lashon of the Gemara it sounds like that the Meicher doesn't remember who he sold it to. He doesn't remember. Seems like from the Gemara that if the Moicher would have remembered, he would be Neman. Now, we just kind of finished saying that a Moicher is not Neman to remember if he received money from both parties. So Zakt Rashi, therefore, V'loy Garsin and V'loy Yada. Take out the word V'loy Yada, because it doesn't make a difference. Even if the Moicher says, I do remember, we don't believe him. Because since he received money from both parties, he's not some lave, he's making a mistake, we don't believe him. You can go ahead and you don't have to you don't have to be Garis V'loy Yada, because if he did know, we're not going to accept anything he says anyway. That's all. Take out the word V'loy Yada. Tosfos argues on Rashi. Zok Tosfos, you have to say that in this case, the Moicher does not remember. Why? Because if the Moicher would remember, even though he no longer has the item in his possession, and since he received money from both parties, he's not going to remember, we don't believe him. Nonetheless, Zok Tosfos, Neman hu ke'ed echad. But he's not any worse than an eid echad. And Zok Tosfos, he's an eid echad. Let's say you have an independent eid echad say, yeah, I remember he's the one that purchased it. He be chayav shvur d'oraisa. Zok Tosfos, if the Moicher would remember, he would be an eid echad. V'amay shneim nishbain. He says, the one that the eid echad is being misayeh should potter from a shvur, and the other one should swear a shvur d'oraisa. So we have machlekes Rashi and Tosfos halacha l'maisa. If the Moicher remembers who he sold it to, is he Neman as an Eid Echad to mechayev one party shvur d'oraisa and part of the other party from a shvur, or is he not Neman like Rashi says? What's that machlekes? With this Rashba, you understand the machlekes very geschmack. Like the Rashba said, the shvur in the Mishnah is not a shvuas haniftarim. It's not a shvur d'oraisa. It's a shvuas hanoitlin. When we're discussing a shvuas hanoitlin, we cannot discuss a shvuas midimiktas, a shvur eid echad, because those are all shvuas haniftarim. The shvur of the Mishnah is a shvuas hanoitlin. Memela, Rashi is going to say we don't have to be garis v'lo yoda, because even if he is yoda, he's not going to affect the role of the shvur in our case, because our shvur is a shvuas hanoitlin. A shvuas hanoitlin. Nowhere do you see eid echad pat as a shvuas hanoitlin. And echad kapater shvuas haniftarim, but not a shvuas hanoitlin. Our mission is shvuas hanoitlin. You're collecting the idea of shvua. So even if the Moicher remembers, and even if you want to call the Moicher an eid echad, we're not going to do anything because it's a shvuas hanoitlin. Mashein kein Tosfos is l'shitasai. Tosfos understands that the shvua in our mission is a shvuas haniftarim. Since it's shvuas haniftarim, it's the same exact thing as a shvuas haniftarim of a shvur d'oraisa. The only difference is, if the Moicher is not here and doesn't remember, it would be a shvuas haniftarim midrabanan, where if you wouldn't swear, you still can collect. Zok Tosfos, but if the Moicher remembers, then the Moicher is an eid echad. So now, if you don't swear, you don't collect. Or you don't keep. I'm sorry, I said that right, because according to Tosfos, shvuas haniftarim, if you don't swear, you don't keep. So the machlekes Rashi Tosfos is mamash l'shitasam, whether you're garis v'lo yoda or not, because this is the machlekes Rashi and Tosfos to understand, is the shvur in the Mishnah a shvuas hanoitlin or shvuas haniftarim. If even by Moicher, yeah, because I'll say Moicher is eid echad. He's not eid echad, but he's muchzik for him. Yeah, but he sold it already. It's not in his possession anymore. It's not his possession. He received money from both parties. He's no longer neman and he didn't Moicher. Right. Right.
If they both swear,
they both collect. That's a shvuas hanoitlin. Yeah, that's a shvuas hanoitlin. Right. So l'chayr, you see mamish the Rishitasam, Rashi and Tosfos, how they understand the shvua of our Mishnah. If you take a look, even as the Gemara continues, very complicated sugya, but the Gemara had a whole shakla v'tarya. Is the achleiku in our Mishnah like the Rabbanon or like Sumchas? So the Gemara wants to say, at one point, the Gemara wants to say that our Mishnah is not like Sumchas, because according to Sumchas, there is no shvua. Let's try to say it just as simple as possible. But the Gemara says, but if you learn like the Rabbanon say, olav haraya, what's pshat in our Mishnah? Now it's very unclear what the Gemara was asking. The Gemara then answers, when did the Rabbanon say, olav haraya, where only one person's holding on to it? And our Mishnah, we're both are holding on to it, therefore, our Mishnah. Very unclear what exactly is the Gemara focusing on our Mishnah in this Shakvataya of the Rabbanon. Rashi understands that the kasha and teretz of the Gemara is on the Shvuah. Zok Rashi, that the kasha of the Gemara is, how could you go ahead and say, Yachloiku b'Shvuah, each party is a muhsik. Each party is a muhsik on the talis. Each party has a cheskes matachlon on the talis. The rule is when someone is a muhsik on a talis, you need edim to take away from him. So how could you say yachloiku b'shvua in our Mishnah? How could a shvua be able to take away from someone? And for the Gemara, according to Rashi, that no, since both are holding on to it, therefore it weakens out the muhsakis of both parties. But Zak Rashi, but still, Bezdin, the way Rashi says the words, he says, Kivin the Mechusar Guvaina, meaning we really are watering down the muhsakis of both parties. But Lamaisa, Bezdin has to get involved, right? Lamaisa, you got to cut the talis, whether you cut it or you sell it, 50-50, we'll get to the Gemaras later. But Bezdin has to get involved to divide the talis. Therefore, Zak Rashi, like Kim Lahu Rabbanon Lahoitzi Mamain Bechaskasai Bichdi, the Rabbanon don't want each party taking away from each other just without any shvua. Kidarminan hasam rabbanan the boiraya hitzricham shvua. So Rashi's understanding that the shvua is almost taking the place of edim, of a raya. Normally, when one person is holding on to something, in order to take it away from him, you need edim. If both parties are holding on to it to take it away from each other, you need a shvua. So a shvua is almost playing the role of edim. It's being mitzi. It's a shvuas hanoitlin. Taisvis is not really clear, but the way the Sheet understands Taisvis, the Gemara is exactly very different. The kasha of the Gemara is, how can you say yachloiku? The kasha of the Gemara is understanding that since each party is a muhsik, and therefore we see each party as being in ganzen a muhsik, how could you even say yachloiku? It should be a hemunach, whatever the case may be. How could you say yachloiku? And for the Gemara, oh no, you know why you say yachloiku? Because since both parties are holding it simultaneously, they're both muhsakim. According to Taisus, there's no discussion about the shvua. The whole issue of the Gemara and the Rabbanan was not discussing shvua. Because again, according to Taisus, the shvua, it's not playing such a big role in our Mishnah. It's true we want you to swear. And it's true if you don't swear, we're going to put you in chayrim. But it's not the shvua that's generating the yachlaiku. It's the tavai muchsakim that's generating the yachlaiku. So according to Taisus, the whole shakir v'tayir of the Gemara was not discussing the shvua, it was discussing how do you say yachlaiku, and how do you put together both holding on to it, each one's holding on to it, do we view it as both muchsakim, each one being independent muchsik? Because again, according to Taisus, the yachlaiku of the Mishnah is dependent on the muchsakais, not on the shvua. According to Rashi, though, that the din of the Mishnah is dependent on the shvua, the shakla v'tayir of the Gemara in the Rabbanon is, what role over here is shvua playing? How can shvua serve to be a mitzi? If you're being quote unquote a big mitzi, then there's a rule how mitzi mechayol of harai, you need edim. Here, you're not being so much of a mitzi, because since both parties are already holding on to it, it's only mechusar gavaina. Bezdin doesn't want pipiyotzim called adam bichdi stamazai, and therefore they're going to go ahead and be mechayiv. Therefore they're going to go ahead and say that with a shvua you can then collect. So you mamish see this machlekes Rashi Taisus going through the different sugyas. It mamish lines up. You'll see in the Rishonim as you go weiter, there'll be a lot of different sugyas where you see, I think, little differences. What's the role of the shvua playing, and what's the achleku based on? A Gemara you did not yet do, but you will do this week, and just to get you ready, is a Gemara in Hayim and Beis. And the Gemara in Hayim and Beis says, Mi'achar shezet tofas v'oimed, v'zet tofas v'oimed shvua zulama. The Gemara says, since both parties are holding on to the talis, why do you make a shvua? Amr Rabbi Yochanan, shvua zu takanas chacham hi shalei hekel echad ve'echad hoylech v'toike betalisa shechaveiroi v'oimer shalihu. That the reason why you make the shvua is, like Rabbi Yochanan, because we don't want, it's poor public policy. We don't want people grabbing talisim from each other. So generally when we see two people with a talis and they're fighting and there's something going on, therefore we decide to say yachlaiku b'shvua. On the surface, it seems like taisus. On the surface, it seems like the Gemara is asking, why are you making a shvua? You naturally have yachlaiku, because both parties have a muksakais. Both parties are in possession of the talis. View both parties as being muksakim in the talis. Say yachlaiku, right? Why do you need a shvua? And for the Gemara, you're right. In this case, you need a shvua, but because takanas hashuk, we go ahead and make a rule. We therefore say make a shvua. On the surface, it seems like taisus, but I just want to make you aware. Follow the flow of the Gemara. The Gemara this is the second part of the Gemara. The Gemara first asks, what's the pshat in the shvua? It's a very, very interesting shvua. Ein li ba pachais mechetzia, right? I don't have in it less than a half. Just get to the point. You have half, you have whole, right? Usually shuas are what you have, not I don't have less than, I have not less than this. Very complicated, the shua. So the first part of the Gemara discusses what's the lashon of the shua. Afterwards, the Gemara asks, why do you make the shua? Now, I just want to put it out there that if I would be the Gemara, I would say exactly in the reverse order. First, the Mishnah is telling me you make a shua. Make a shua? What do you make a shua for? Both are muksakim. Say achleiku. Why are you making a shua for? Answer to me why you make a shua. Then I'll get into the details. Why is the shua formulated the way it's formulated? The Gemara asks it exactly the opposite. The Gemara is almost like going through the complications of the formulation, the shpach of the shua, and then the Gemara is asking that why do you make the shua in the first place? Want to leave that? To me, it seems like there's a flow. What that will be, in Mitzvah Shem, when you do Daf Hey Amud Beis, you'll see what it is. And just to throw out just another question on the Gemara, after learning Daf Beis and Daf Gimel, if I would have gotten up and said to you, why are you swearing in our Mishnah? Why are you swearing? You probably would say to me, it's a Gemara Daf Beis Amud Beis. Because people are Meireh Heter. When it comes to Mitzvah, people are Meireh Heter. People find a term to grab from each other. When it comes to Mekach Memkar, they both parties paid, so people are Meireh Heter. We don't stam zayar, not mechayiv shuas. Here, there's a chash, like the Gemara says in Daf Beis Amud Beis. What's the Gemara asking? I think, if you go following the flow, I think you will see, a Pesach to where Rashi and the Ramban learn, and why, even though on the surface it does seem like this is a raya to Tosfos, you go a little bit deeper and you follow the Hemshech of the Gemara, I think this serves as a very good mocker to Shitas Rashi and the Rishonim. The last thing I just want to speak out is back to this Shari Shavuos, was the Rif, Enokel of the Rif. When he discusses Shvuas HaNoitlin, one of the examples he gives to Shvuas HaNoitlin is the Shua of our Mishnah. He says one of the examples of Shvuas HaNoitlin is V'oit sheninu b'shnayim oichsen b'talas, zeh oimer ani mitzasiya, v'zeh oimer ani mitzasiya, zeh oimer kula sheli, v'zeh oimer kula sheli, zeh yishav Hashem lo b'pachs mechetzia, v'zeh yishav Hashem lo b'pachs mechetzia, v'yach loiku. Kol elu nishboim b'noitlin. These are all nishboim b'noitlin. This same Shari Shavuos, a little weiter, discusses an important din, which I was told was discussed last week. Just want to chazir it over because this is Mama Shari Shavuos inside. As we know, as you'll get to the Gemara a little bit later, the case of Shnayim Oichsin means you're holding on to the edges of the talis, right? Shnayim Oichsin, right? Holding on to the edges of the talis, okay? The fringes of the talis. There's another din of Shnayim Adukim, where you have both parties holding on to the talis like this. Now, there's a difference. Shnayim Oichsin Yachloiku B'Shvua. Shnayim Adukim, whatever's under one party's hand, he keeps. Whether others under the other party's hand, he keeps, and you only make a shvua on the rest because there's a cheskas metaltlin on whatever is underneath your hand. The Gemara is going to discuss it's as if you cut it off. That's the halacha. What are you making a shvua on when you swear on the rest? Are you making a shvua on the achloika, which is in between, or you're also making a shvua on what's underneath your hand? Tosfos says you're making a shvua also what's underneath your hand, not only what's in between. In order for you to take what's underneath your hand and afterwards take part of the rest, which is not underneath any part of his hand, you have to make a shvua. That Tosfos, I believe, is l'shitasai. Because just like in the Mishnah, the shvua is not allowing you to collect. What's allowing you to collect is your mechzakais. You're only making a shvuas haniftarim, to keep what you have. So Tosfos will say, yodai magas, whatever's underneath your hand is the exact same thing. You want to keep what's underneath your hand, because you're a muchzik, you have to make a shvuas haniftarim. Now, if you don't make a shvuas haniftarim, you still can keep it. We'll put you in chayrim. But you still have to make a shvuas haniftarim. No, according to Tosfos says that you're not geras v'hashar. You didn't make a shvua. Near the legasin v'hashar. Da'af b'mashe yodei magas yishava.
He's asking if let's say there would be nothing in between. Let's say there would be nothing.
No, I still think you have to make a shvua. Not like the Rambam.
Yes,
because the Rambam holds shvuas hanaitlin.
Because it has to start on the middle.
Because he holds that it's a shvuas hanaitlin in the Mishnah. He gilgul shvua. It's gilgul shvua. I'll get there. Well, one second. So, too fast for me. Right? Again, let's go back for a minute, okay? I'm just saying the case of Yodei Magas in the Gemara. The case of Yodei Magas in the Gemara is each party has a chelik of the talis underneath their hands, but there's also room in the talis in the middle. That is the case on Daf Zayin. right, of Yodem Agas. 1 second, right? There the Gemara says Yishava, you have to swear. What is that Yishava going on? Zok Taisis, that Yishava is going on not only what's in between the two hands, well, Reuben's hand and Shimon's hand, not only on what's in between, but also what's underneath their hands. You have to swear on that also, Zok Taisis, right? Taisis sounds like it's Me'ikar Adin. I understand that to be because according to Taisis, what's the difference between what's in between and what's underneath your hand? Both of them you have a right to collect because of your muksakais. In both of them, the shvua is only to keep what you have. So mali what's in between the two hands, and one mali what's underneath your hand. It's a shvuas haniftarim. It's a shvua to keep what you have. You have to swear on what's in between and what's underneath your hand. Zok the Rif and Shari Shvuas says, no, you only have to swear what's in between, not what you're holding on to. Yishava is only on the shar. It's true you also might have to swear what's underneath your hands, but that's midin gilgul shvua. Din gilgul shvua, and as I pass in the Rambam, din gilgul shvua is, since you're swearing anyway on what's in between, on the shar, so then we can, then we can include in the shvua what's yodei magas. But a nafkamina will be, like the Rav just said, is, let's say they're both holding on to the talis and there's nothing in between. I believe there'll be machlokes Tosfos, and the Ram says mefurish. I mean, not mefurish, but it's clear. There'll be machlokes Tosfos against Rashi, Rambam, Ramban, whether there's a shvur or not. According to Tosfos, you still have to swear because the shvur is haniftarim. You have to swear on what you keep. Mashe Enkein, according to the Rambam, according to the Rif and Shari Shvuas, there's no gilgul shvur over there because there's no shvur on the shar. Say, Elamai, you want to make it a shvuas haniftarim or what's underneath your hands? That's not the shvur of the Mishnah. Shvuas the Mishnah, shvuas hanreiklim.
What's the status of the Gilgul Shvua? What, is it the Rabbanah or Isa? We're saying it's the Rabbanah.
No, it's all, the Shvua of the Mishnah is all the Rabbanah. Everyone's saying the Shvua of the Mishnah is the Rabbanah. The question is the Shvuas Hanret and Shvuas Haniftarim. It was only a Havamin on the Gemara and Daf Gimel and Reb Chia that's a Shvua d'Oraisa Moed Miktsas. Avad is a Shvua d'Rabbanan. Regular Gilgul Shvua. So again, you just see going through the sugyas constantly, and I think you'll see it plenty of times, this tension between this Shnai Moichsin, between Rashi and Tosfos, the Rishonim, and in the Gemaras it keeps on coming up, what exactly is the Achloiku and the Shvua in the Mishnah. So I think that's just a good hakdama because it's so many sugyas it's going to touch upon. As you go weiter, and as you see over the next week, this Yisoid and these Machlokes and these Shitas, the role of the Achloiku in the Mishnah and the role of the Shvua in the Mishnah. I just wanted to be Messiah, say over a little bit of a vart. The Ikar vart is really for my Shiur Zechron Levracha, but the way it applies, the prat during this Tkufa, during this man. As we all know, the Parsha we just learned today, Parsha Kisisa, we're going to learn again next week, Parsha Shkolim. The Masechta Seifrim, it's based, of course, like the Gemara and Megillah and the Yerushalmi. The reason why we learn Parsha Shkolim by Rosh Chodesh Adar and the Shabbos of Mevorchim HaChodesh, the reason why we learn Parshas Shkolim is because it was the Machzis HaShekel that was given in the Midbar by Klal Yisrael is preceded the Asaras Alofim Kikar Kesef that Haman Rasha wanted to give to Mordechai, and therefore our Machzis HaShekel protected us from the Asaras Kikar Kesef that Haman was giving to Mordechai. And that's why we learn Parsha Shkolim, Rosh Chodesh Adar. So my Shver always was a little bit bothered. What was it about Machzis HaShekel? What was it about Machzis HaShekel that the Machzis HaShekel served as a kapara for the Asaras Alofim Kikar Kesef of Haman? Second of all, when Haman spoke to Achashverosh about wanting to kill all the Yidden, he says, Yesh lecha am echad mefuzar mefayred ben ha'amim. You have a nation, they're scattered. Let me pay you for them. I'm going to give you Asaras Alofim Kikar Kesef. The fact that they were scattered, what did that have to do with the fact that Haman was willing to buy off the Yidden? And that was something he was always bothered by. Lamaisa, Tosfos and Megillah, and really Rabbeinu Bachya in the Karakemach speaks out a beautiful cheshbon. He says, where did Haman get the number 10,000 Kikar Kesef? Zot, the way Rabbeinu Bachya says it, Tosfos, I think there's a mistake how it's printed, but I think Tosfos is saying the same idea. He got the number from the following cheshbon. A yid, the individual worth of a yid is 50 shekel. How do you know that? Because in Parshas B'chukaisai, when you deal with Erechin, if a person says Erech Alai, the din is you have to pay 50 shekel. The worth of individual yid is 50 shekel. There were 600,000 yid in the left Mitzrayim. 600,000 times 50 shekel comes out to 30 million shkolim. Asaras alfei kikar kesef is equal to 30 million shkalim. Memela, Zak Taisis, Zak Rabbeinu Bachya, that what Haman was saying was as follows. Listen, Achashverosh, there's 600,000 Yidden that left Mitzrayim that we are all from. Each individual Yid is only worth 50 shekel. I'll buy them all for you. I'll give you 50 shekel worth every Jew. That's a total of 30 million shkalim. And now, let's just destroy them. Because the individual worth of each Yid is only 50 shekel. So then, how does our Machzis HaShekel go ahead and mechaper for that? Because again, as I'm sure you all heard, that the whole musig of Machzis HaShekel, why is it Machzis HaShekel, Ha'esher lo yarbe, v'adal lo yamit? Because Machzis HaShekel, the idea is the collective koyach of Klal Yisrael, the actus of Klal Yisrael. It's true. Each individual Yid is worth only 50 shekel. But when you put all of Yidden together, and you use all the koyachas together, then they are worth a lot more. And that Haman cannot pay off. When Haman said, let me pay 50 shekel per Yid, he was saying, Yesh lecha am echad, mefuzar mufarid ben ha'amim. Klal Yisrael is not ba'achtus. They are spread out. They are a bunch of individuals. Therefore, my money can cover them. Machzis HaShekel says, no, we're not individuals. We're all together. We're a collective. And then our value is that much more, right? You can buy a screw in Home Depot for $2. It's $2. You build your house that's holding up your chandelier. It's worth a lot more than $2. When Klal Yisrael collectively work together, that avada makes Klal Yisrael, each individual, worth that much more. And since it's infinite how much each individual is worth when they work collectively, that Haman cannot pay off, even Haman cannot afford. That amount is infinite. And that's also the pshat, why it says that by Machzis HaShekel, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu was niskashalai. When the mitzvah of Machzis HaShekel was given to Moshe Rabbeinu, he had difficulty with the mitzvah. So it says that Machzis HaShekel, right? Yeah. So it says that Kadosh Baruch Hu was maraloi Machzis HaShekel be'esh, amud shel esh, and therefore he understood what Machzis HaShekel is. So I have two questions on that Shaka B'Taya, the Matbeah Shalesh. One question is that if you look in the Mechilta, it says that there are three things that were niskash to Moshe Rabbeinu. One was the Chiddush HaLevana. That's very complicated, right? When exactly is the Levana's Chadish, now you can do Kiddush HaChodesh. One was the Menorah, very complicated, and one is the Shvatzim, the different types of Shvatzim. There are thousands of different types of Shvatzim. That was niskash to Moshe Rabbeinu. It does not discuss Machzis HaShekel. More so, when it comes to the Menorah and the Levana and Shkatzim, it doesn't say HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him b'mara shel esh. So what is it? What was niskasha by Machzis HaShekel? It's not listed by the other three. What was niskasha to Moshe Rabbeinu? What's so difficult about Machzis HaShekel? And second of all, vos epis esh. So L'maisa the Cheskuni in Bahaloischa, Cheskuni says that what was niskasha to Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't what a Machzis HaShekel looks like. That was niskasha to Moshe Rabbeinu. You can know what it looks like. What was niskash to Moshe Rabbeinu was v'azoi. How is it shayach? Such a small amount lachaperes b'nei Yisrael. How could a Machzis HaShekel, such a small amount, every Yid give a Machzis HaShekel, serve as a gavaldika kapara for Klal Yisrael? That was niskasha to Moshe Rabbeinu. So then the teretz is, I think, pashut. Because Baruch Hu showed him a Machzis HaShekel matbeah shel esh. As you all know, esh, when it exists on its own, if you don't give it a constant source of fuel, it just dies out. But you take one little match, it could die out at any moment, you put it to something else, something flammable, and you have an explosion. You can burn down a whole city, right? What HaKadosh Baruch Hu was showing to Moshe Rabbeinu, you don't understand. This Machzis HaShekel is made out of esh. It's something that on its own, you're right. It can't be mechaber, it's just going to die down. But you put it together, you're going to have a very big fire. And that big fire is going to be the collective koiches of Klal Yisrael. As we work together collectively, not just as individuals, that served as a Yeshua by Yomim Hahem, and that should serve as Yeshua for us, Bazman Hazeh. Agudah.